Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Thirumoy Banerjee and here's a look at the stories for the day. If you are an Android user, which you most likely are, given Google Mobile OS dominance in India, March end 2023 saw developments that are likely to affect your smartphone experience. On March 29, the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal upheld the 1,338 crore rupees fine imposed on Google by the Competition Commission of India or CCI. However, while holding that the CCI investigation did not violate the principles of natural justice, the tribunal set aside certain directions issued by the competition watchdog. So, how exactly will this affect you, the user? Bhashwar Kumar explains.
Amid growing scrutiny across major markets, Google has received a modicum of relief in India. On March 29th, the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal upheld the Competition Commission of India order, imposing a penalty of 1,338 crore rupees on Alphabet-owned Google for misusing its dominant position in the Android mobile device ecosystem. However, the tribunal set aside 4 key directions of the competition watchdog that the tech giant had to comply with. When CCI imposed the fine on Google in October last year, it also issued 10 non-monetary directions against the tech giant. Now, Google has been given 30 days to comply with all the other directions of the CCI and pay up the penalty. The directive that asked Google to allow individual App Store developers to distribute their App Store via the Google Play Store was quashed. This CCI order had been a major concern for Google. Another direction that said that Google shall not restrict uninstalling of its pre-installed apps by users was also set aside. The tribunal also set aside the CCI direction that Google should allow app developers to distribute apps through sideloading. The last directive that was set aside was that Google should not deny access to its application programming interface or APIs to the disadvantage of original equipment manufacturers, app developers, and competitors. A legal expert Business Standard spoke to said the silver lining for Google was that it could get the NCLAT to set aside select CCI directions that would have been particularly concerning for its business model. However, NCLAT has upheld the competition watchdog's observation that the tech giant has misused its dominant position in the Android ecosystem. Google's Android mobile operating system dominates in India with a market share of about 95%. Thus, any tweaks to how the Android OS works can potentially affect almost all of India's 600 million smartphone users. So, is Google getting relief on these 4 key CCI directives a positive or negative development for users?
Overall, if we need to summarize it, it's a positive for the consumer because the practice of side loading, which also impacts the security of the device, will no longer be there. There will be certain curves imposing, and coming from Google, it will be good for user because we have seen a lot of cases of privacy coming from the side loading of the apps, which has been one of the key reason for your malware detection on the phone.
Overall, from a consumer perspective or a user perspective, this decision is not a very good one. Because it takes the teeth out of the original CCI order, which would have posed a lot of restrictions on Google and forced it to modify its business model and the anti-competitive behavior. So yes, of course, the user's choice would be restricted since Google would no longer be bound to allow individual app developers to distribute their apps via the Google Play Store.
The setting aside of which of these 4 directions will have the most impact on users?
So I think the major impact, like I said, side loading is one. Again, we need to look at it at multiple angles, right? There are certain Play Stores. Obviously, there are third-party apps that are good, right? You might find an app, but what about the overall security of those Play Stores, right? So users can still go out and check on those app stores rather than allowing the distribution through the Play Store. Yes, in a sense, we can say that the user choice will be curtailed to a certain extent.
The tech major will still need to comply with the remaining 6 orders of the CCI in India. These are as follows. Google can't force OEMs to pre-install an entire suite of apps or position its apps in a certain way. Google will not be able to link the licensing of Play Store and Play services to OEMs with the requirement of pre-installing any of its other applications. It won't be able to pay OEMs to maintain the exclusivity of its search services. It won't be able to stop OEMs from selling smart devices based on Android forks. And it must allow users to choose their default search engine. Google may appeal in the Supreme Court against directives like allowing OEMs to develop devices based on Android forks, which the tech giant claims is a risk to user safety. But how will users be affected if these 6 CCI directions are ultimately upheld?
If the Supreme Court upholds them, then Google would be forced to continue to comply with them. And I think from a long-term perspective, it gives more space in the market for competition. Also, it prevents the strong arm tactics of Google in terms of forcing OEMs to have its pre-installed apps, and besides also giving the users much more flexibility in terms of the usage of other options.
NCLAT's directive maintains the status quo on the safety of Android users. But the universe of app stores and alternatives that would have been available to them has shrunk. Since both Google and CCI can challenge NCLAT's decision, there may be additional developments that can affect 570 million Indians. While we keep a lookout for them, maybe a debate on whether safety should come at the cost of choice is also necessary.
The final match of the first ever Women's Premier League or WPL concluded in India on Sunday, March 26. The finals held in Mumbai saw a footfall of 35,000 with not a seat empty. This perhaps shows the growing popularity of the WPL. So what next for the WPL, and how did the maiden season truly fare? Tushar Verma brings you the answer.
ये तो बस शुरुआत है और this is just the beginning is the tagline and lyrics of the Women's Premier League or WPL anthem. The tagline could not have been more apt considering the success of the league. Streamed on Jio Cinema, the final match alone added a whopping 10 million new viewers. Moreover, the average watch time per game per user touched 50 minutes. These data points show that WPL was a roaring success. What do experts in the field have to say about this?
The first season was excellent. You're talking 5 teams. You're talking 5 representative teams that come from different parts of the country. If you really look at it, you know, there is a great degree of interest in cricket, particularly women's cricket now. And that was summarized to an extent by the turnout at the final match. And of course, by the kind of television viewership it got. So gone are the days when people used to be very gender divisive about cricket.
The media rights for WPL for 5 years, that is during 2023 to 27, were auctioned at a whopping rupees 951 crore, while it is still far short in comparison to men's IPL, which bagged rupees 48,390 crore in media rights. Experts say it is still a good start. Although limited to only 5 teams in total, the WPL auction of teams surpassed the men's IPL auctions in its first season. The 5 WPL teams clinched more than $500 million. In comparison, the men's IPL in 2008 bagged $387 million. So, what is next for the Women's Premier League?
The WPL, what it'll have to do at some point is figure out how to fit itself in the calendar, offer more teams, and also be able to have matches all around the country. Be able to have home and away, which is the big hook that brings cricket fans to a stadium in these cities where these teams are operating from. I think in terms of popularity, spreading it by increasing the teams maybe from 5 to 7, because you would look and say, look, Calcutta doesn't have a team and women's cricket in Bengal is huge. And similarly with Rajasthan Royals, which is Jaipur, where while women's sport is not as popular as it is in West Bengal, Jaipur has always spoken about, including women in their amongst their fans and their players. So why should there not be a team from Kolkata and from Jaipur? So I think 7 teams is it.
There were some issues that were spotlighted. The Board of Control for Cricket in India, or BCCI, gave directives at the beginning of the season to reduce the boundaries by 5 meters, bringing it to 60 meters. This was less than the Women's T20 World Cup. In reality, however, the boundaries were as close as 42 to 44 meters. In an earlier morning show episode, Business Standard had said that Chennai Super Kings was interested in having a women's team. However, the team later pulled out. Reports suggested that the decision was based on their business strategy. The WPL, nevertheless, has proved to be a launching pad for women cricketers. So what is the expert's take on what it means for women sportspersons?
I think the WPL has completely changed the economic framework of women's sport in India, both team and individual. The fact that there are these large sums of money available to give to women cricketers has already, I think, made women's cricket the number one women's sport in the country without even in the matter of a few months, because of the fact that it offers these opportunities of livelihood of players that are the salaries that are at the scale of what women's team sport is worldwide, if not higher. Now you're talking about the financial and the buying power of Indian cricket as opposed to the buying power of and the buying power of Indian cricket in women's sport as opposed to the buying power of US and English football in women's sport. So that's what's on the sort of that's the competition that's going to be in.
You know, a name like Meg Lanning was possibly not heard by too many. But today, anybody who's watched possibly the WPL knows her. So it is a question of saying that, it has established identity for global players within the Indian format. Indians are going to own global players when they support individual teams. Corporate India is already doing that. Bollywood will hopefully do a little more on this. So I think the entire masala mixture of IPL gets transitioned to women's Premier League.
While the WPL has been a success, given that it was the first season, there is still work to be done. Right now, the league is limited to only 5 teams, unlike IPL, which has 10 teams. Experts say that work on building the brand of individual teams and players will require sustained efforts. It remains to be seen how the future seasons of WPL will hold up.
From buoyancy in WPL, we now talk about stock markets where buoyancy is still a pipe dream. Markets delivered negative returns in FY23, a first in 3 financial years. Global growth outlook is worsening due to the recent banking crisis in the US and Europe. And even as the erratic weather conditions in India delay rural recovery amid worsening inflation, the outlook for FY24 remains uncertain. In our next report, Nikita Vashisht lists key factors that would sway markets in FY24. Equity markets are entering the new financial year or FY24 on an uncertain note. Globally, stubborn inflation amid rising interest rates and fears of a recession in 2023 are some risks that the markets need to navigate. Back home, El Nino and its impact on the monsoon and thus inflation also needs to be monitored.
Again, the expectations are that CPI inflation from here onwards should head down, but whether that comes down to around 4% trajectory or not by June, July is something that we have to keep a very close eye on. And consequently, point number 3, which is the rate tightening cycle from RBI's perspective, ideally the April rate hike should be the last one on the cards, and beyond that there should be a longish pause.
Market returns in FY24 therefore will be a play against inflation and monetary policies. Analysts say the RBI's terminal interest rates and their impact on credit demand will be another key trigger for the markets. Another second-order impact of inflation, which may also affect equities performance in FY24, is earnings growth. If interest rates stay higher for a longer period, it may lead to demand destruction globally and domestically, dent margins and push up finance costs. Analysts said earnings outlook may worsen if exports slow down and weakness in the rural economy persists amid El Nino concerns. Globally, dollar liquidity and geopolitical tensions would be key market movers in FY24.
US interest rates and dollar liquidity conditions, especially for emerging market economies, but also for Euro region countries. The second variable will be the rupee movement versus US dollar, because any major depreciation of INR can have adverse relation to USD returns for FPIs. Any geopolitical events, including relations between the West on the one hand and China and Russia on the other hand, any movement or any greater tension with relation to Taiwan can have a major impact on the market because of semiconductor supply chain issues.
Therefore, with inflation being the sole trigger for equities this financial year, pockets such as mass consumption that benefit from cooling inflation may be better off in the current environment. Today, investors will track the 3-day monetary policy meeting of the Reserve Bank of India along with manufacturing and services PMI data. Donald Trump became the first former president of the United States to face criminal charges. A grand jury in New York voted to indict him. But why has he been charged? Raghav Agarwal has the answer.
On Thursday, a grand jury in New York voted to indict former US President Donald Trump on charges related to hush money payments to an adult film star. Trump will be the first former US president to face criminal charges. Shortly before Trump ran for the post of US president in 2016, he allegedly paid hush money to adult filmmaker and actor Stormy Daniels, whose actual name is Stephanie Clifford. Daniels, who allegedly once had an affair with Trump, had a sexual encounter with him in 2006. She later publicly acknowledged the encounter with Trump and said that his then attorney, Michael Cohen, made a payment of $130,000 to buy Daniels' silence over it. This is the case under which he has been indicted. Cohen is now an outspoken foe of Trump and has already testified before the grand jury about making the payment to Daniels in October 2016. He said that Trump reimbursed the money via monthly checks of $35,000 from his personal account. In 2018, Cohen pleaded guilty to finance charges related to the payment. Trump denies all wrongdoing. He has repeatedly stated that the investigations against him were political witch hunts. He also denies having an affair with Daniels. However, he admits to making payments to Cohen, claiming to be a victim of extortion. Trump will now be called to the court to answer the criminal charges. He will enter a plea and further dates for proceedings will be set. Reports suggest that the legal process in such cases is complex and even years may pass between Trump's indictment and any possible trial. Trump has several other cases filed against him. The US Justice Department is investigating his attempted election subversion and incitement of attack on Congress on January 6th. Another case relates to Trump's retention of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago residence. Prosecutors are figuring out whether Trump willfully retained the documents to obstruct justice. Trump also faces a defamation charge from an allegation of rape made by writer E. Jean Carroll. Trump is eyeing the Republican presidential nomination for the 2024 elections. If Trump is convicted, will he be barred from running for US president in 2024? According to constitutional experts in the United States, this indictment or even a conviction will not hinder Trump from running for president again. According to the US Constitution, a person needs to be a natural-born US citizen, aged 35 years or more, and a resident of the US for 14 years to be eligible to run for the US presidency. It says nothing about a candidate being a convicted felon or facing a criminal indictment. So, this indictment or even a possible conviction may not prevent Donald Trump from running for president.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
So, despite his indictment, Trump can still run for president in 2024. That's all for today. For more news and analysis, please log on to business-standard.com.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.